Chapter 64, Work Programs. Minimum had an array of work programs for us. Some actually went into society and some stayed amongst the various Lawton institutions. Little Bliss allowed convicts to clean up the streets and highways in Virginia, and Fight Back and Payback allowed convicts to clean up streets and buildings in D.C. Work Release allowed convicts to work a regular 9 to 5 in society, then return to the prison at a set time. A prison bus would take you to a halfway house at 1010 North Capitol Street at 5 a.m. Once there, all you had to do was sign in and then leave out immediately. You were unsupervised and didn't have to return until 5 p.m. Then the prison bus would take you back to Lorton. This was done 5 days a week. The program was almost shut down after a friend of mine was killed on his second day on the program. He was working in a barbershop when one of his old adversaries walked in and emptied a clip into his chest. On work release, you earned regular wages but was required to set aside 20% of the earnings that went to the institution. Lawton was in a class of its own. I made it onto a program that took us to the dairy to feed the cows and the bull. The milk from the cows was used for the prisoners. We also went to 6 other Lawton prisons to cut bushes and shrubs. We mostly stayed outside of the prisons, but one day they took us inside of Youth Center 1 where my brother was doing time. We wore army fatigues, which distinguished us from other prisoners who wore either Lawton blues or grays. Neighbors around the prisons actually thought the convicts cleaning the streets and cutting the grass on the side of the roads were army personnel. Once they found out we were convicts, they began to complain to their council members. The council then begged the prison to remove the captain bars and military insignia from the fatigues, which they didn't. Chapter 65, The Mission. As soon as I walked through the prison gates and the gun tower, then onto the Youth Center 1 compound, somebody walked up and said, "Damn, twin, I'm surprised they let you keep them fatigues. You still on the pound or you went to minimum?" "I'm over minimum, but my brother over here." He was confused. Then he looked at me a little harder. I had a muscular build from working out in the feds. My brother wasn't working out at all. He was smoking weed all day, every day. "Hold up. You his brother?" I nodded. "His twin?" I nodded again. "Oh shit, Slim. I thought you were still in the feds." I just got back. He couldn't believe it. He was stunned. He stared at me for what seemed like minutes, then laughed. "Man, y'all identical for real." "Where he at?" "Oh, my fault. He's in the Mission. Come on." The Mission is the same cell block I did my 90-day study in 4 years prior, but now it's just an ordinary cell block. They weren't doing psychological studies anymore. As we walked to the Mission, guys were walking past speaking to me as if I was my brother. "Twin, what's up?" "Hey, twin, get me some of them camouflage pants, Joe." "Twin, what you doing, push-ups now? You looking a little buffed." We walked straight into a cell block and the officer at the front desk spoke. "Hey, Mr. Mowat." The contrast between the feds and Lorton was amazing. The compound felt like an uncontrolled neighborhood. The feds felt like a controlled college campus, though just as dangerous. We walked down the hallway and he knocked on a cell door that had a towel stuffed at the bottom and another towel covering the cell door window. "Twin, it's Noochie." I stood over to the side as a face peeked from behind the towel and the door opened slightly. "Hurry up so the smoke don't escape," I heard my brother tell him. As he walked in, I walked in directly behind him. My brother looked at me but paused for a second and then, "Oh shit," he yelled out. It was our first time seeing each other since he came to visit me on our 19th birthday in Colorado 3 years prior. "Youngin', what the fuck you doing in here?" We embraced in a big hug. Benny Lee Lawson and Yuk, his co-defendants, also jumped off of the bed and gave me big hugs. I haven't seen them in almost 5 years. Yuk and my brother had 2 baseball bat-shaped spliffs burning at the same time. We reminisced about the streets and even how lucky they were that the feds decided to send their case back to the state. After all, they got arrested with a mini arsenal, an AR-180 assault rifle with the 4-power telescopic sight, Tech 9, a Mossberg, 357 Magnum, a 380, a Taurus 9mm in body armor. Because none of the guns had their fingerprints and they were found in someone else's home, the feds wasn't interested. If so, they could have easily ended up with 10 to 15 years apiece instead of just 4. Luckily, the homie Shamel, R.I.P, who had gotten out of the house through the side window as the cops were coming in, had just greased and cleaned every one of the weapons. I told them stories of the feds and working out with the Cubans and big strong LA Crips and Bloods. They were intrigued of the stories because Lawton was nothing like the feds and the feds was nothing like Lawton. It was like night and day. Barely anyone in Lawton was addicted to the weight pile. Everyone stayed nimble to be able to move fast during fist fights or knife pushing. Being bulked up was really a disadvantage. It just looked good in clothes and women liked it. Bro pulled out his photo album and we reminisced about the streets while looking at the girls in the pics. Damn, these are the good old days before time stopped. Yuk replied while laughing hard. Shit is unfair for real. Time should wait for us. We all fell out laughing. So what's the plans when we get out of here? Benny said. No one spoke immediately. It was a loaded question. A question that we all hoped we could accurately answer and fulfill. We had absolutely no idea what life would dish out once we returned back to reality. But we all knew that we held the keys to the ignition and had control of our own steering wheels. The good thing was, we didn't have any unresolved beefs brewing. I'm going back to college then, to work with my father installing phone systems, Benny said before anyone else answered. We usually called him Lee's, his middle name. He smiled a lot, he was quiet and humble, but nothing to play with. Lee's took business administration at UDC on the street before being arrested and continuing his education while at Lorton, where he was taking English composition at Lorton's UDC college classes. He and Yuk were high school graduates, unlike me and Bro. We dropped out in our 10th grade year to pursue a career in herb distribution. I'ma get money. The Connects already got everything in place. They just waiting for us to touch down, my brother replied. Plus all the Connects you got in the feds, shit, we're gonna be great. Yuk laughed and lit his baseball bat-shaped spliff again. Man, it's whatever with me. I'm trying to see $1 million before I turn 25. He was only 21. My brother and I were 22, and Benny was 23. My plans were to open a music studio and produce hip-hop and reggae music. Our ideas together seemed feasible. My brother and Yuk could be the financiers, Benny could be the executive, and I would be the talent. Lee's was always focused. He didn't smoke or drink, but my brother and Yuk had rolled 2 more blunts and began burning them simultaneously. And now I was catching a contact. I hadn't gotten high in almost 4 years since experimenting with acid in Colorado. Minimum did random drug tests. And if I were to test positive, I would be sent back to medium or maximum and it would be reported to the parole board, which could cost me a 1 to 2 year set-off. I didn't need that, so we exited the cell and headed on to the compound. While walking, we were causing a frenzy. Everybody on the compound knew my brother and they called him Twin. But seeing him with someone that was his real carbon copy had some of his best friends just staring. Damn, so that's why they call you Twin. One guy even said, man, y'all could switch up. We looked at each other and laughed. While walking into the chow hall, a lieutenant, we called them white shirts because they wore white shirts. He immediately got on his radio. Within a minute, 3 officers came over and escorted us to the lieutenant office. He also contacted the supervisor of the work crew that I was on. I was then escorted out of the prison and back onto the work truck and disallowed from ever returning there. Switching up wasn't even an option for us. I was in minimum security with less than a year left to see the parole board, and my brother had 3 months left to serve. switching from one prison to another was absurd, if that's what they thought. A couple days later, I had to go back to the captain's office to retrieve my cassette tapes and to answer for the shot, aka disciplinary report, aka DR. It was for disrespecting an officer. If I was found guilty of the infraction, he would have to send it over to a hearing. I would then be removed from the work program and possibly the minimum security compound. As I sat in his office, the same female inmate from the water fountain at the female prison was taking out the trash. She stopped and looked at me and then went into the adjacent room to collect more trash. She worked in his office and I didn't like the way she looked at me, almost as if she knew I was at the female prison a few days earlier. She then called the captain into that adjacent room and they closed the door. I got paranoid and my face became hardened. I said to myself, man, I hope this chick ain't no rat. 3 minutes later, he emerged. He was carrying a bag of cassette tapes and, surprising to me, he passed them back to me. I'm returning these tapes, but you need to give away some of them because you have way too many, he said. Though they didn't specify how many we could have, I had hundreds. From Ghetto Boys to Gregory Isaacs. From Bounty Killer to KRS-One. From Super Cat to Scarface, and from Rare Essence to Redman. We were allowed to have 10 cassette tapes mailed in every month, so I would use other people's names to get 30 or 40 sent in every month. He then looked at my shot and tore it up. Have a nice day, young man. I couldn't contain my big smile. You have a nice day too. I got up and walked out. I later found out from Sierra that the reason he returned everything and tore up the shot was because the female prisoner knew that I knew that her and the captain were fucking. I didn't realize that she saw me peek through the window that day. They had stopped immediately after she saw me and panicked. Realizing that I didn't say anything to anyone about it, he appreciated and returned the favor. He could have lost his job and went to prison if it was a snitch that saw them. Her and Sierra were good friends. A person of authority having sexual relations with a prisoner is automatically considered rape, because the power disparity makes it impossible for the prisoner to consent, according to the law. If she would have gotten in trouble, she may have decided to call rape to save herself. Many female inmates has consented to having sex with the officers, then yell rape. He goes to jail and she get a nice settlement, even released from prison early.